In a silent night, under a sky covered with clouds, a lonely teenager hears the metallic screech of a broken bicycle. In front of him, a stranger watches his only means of transport lying in pieces. The easy thing would have been to ignore it. But that boy, with nothing more than his hands and a noble heart, decided to repair the bicycle without asking for a cent. No one could have guessed what would happen at dawn, when the roar of hundreds of engines would shake the calm of the entire neighborhood. If you want to discover stories like this, where a simple gesture changes entire destinies, subscribe now and don't miss what's coming. The camera slides slowly through a forgotten neighborhood, where every peeling wall seems to guard secrets from the past. The streetlights flicker, throwing intermittent flashes that barely light up the wet, silent streets. In the distance, the echo of a barking dog breaks the monotony of the night. In the middle of that decay stands a small house with a patched roof and windows covered by old curtains. Inside lives Alex, a 17-year-old boy. His life was never easy. He lost his father as a child, and his mother works until late at night to keep the household standing. Alex quickly learned that if he wanted to move forward, he had to manage on his own. Mechanics became his refuge, his way of fighting loneliness. With borrowed tools and rusty pieces salvaged from junkyards, Alex discovered he had a gift, bringing back to life what others had given up on. He spent entire nights with his hands covered in grease, tightening bolts and gears, while an old radio kept him company. The neighborhood saw him as just another kid, maybe too quiet, too absorbed in his world. But behind that tired look and those hardened hands was something no one could notice, a spirit forged in silence, stronger than the very steel he worked with every day. If this story grips you, give this video a like and activate the bell, because here we tell the stories that no one else dares to reveal. The night dragged on slowly, wrapped in a heavy silence that seemed to swallow every corner of the neighborhood. Suddenly, that silence broke with a heavy, irregular sound. Footsteps dragging across the asphalt. Alex, still in his improvised workshop, looked up and saw him. A man with an intimidating presence approached. He wore a leather jacket weathered by years, faded patches on his back, and a gray beard covering almost his entire face. He wasn't pushing a powerful motorcycle, as one might expect, but something stranger. A wrecked bicycle, wheels bent and the chain dangling like a broken skeleton. The contrast was brutal. A biker, symbol of strength, of power, reduced to walking with a broken bicycle under the flickering light of a street lamp. His gaze was hard, distrusting, as if he expected nothing from anyone. He barely spoke, just a grunt that revealed his exhaustion and disdain. But Alex did not step back. He approached calmly, picked up his tools, and without asking for permission or questions, began to work. The sound of metal echoed in the air. the turn of the wrench, the snap of pliers, the echo of a precise hammer strike. Every spark that flew seemed like a spark of life in the middle of the darkness. The man watched in silence, arms crossed, forehead furrowed. It was as if he wanted to maintain his mask of toughness, but something in his gaze betrayed a flicker of respect. In that instant, two opposite worlds touched. The innocence of a young man who only wanted to help, and the roughness of a drifter marked by the road. When Alex finished, he lifted the bicycle with effort and handed it back repaired. He asked for no money, said nothing. The silence was as heavy as the motorcycles that would roar at dawn. The biker, however, understood everything, and behind that simple gesture lay the beginning of something much bigger than either of them could imagine. The sun was just beginning to break the darkness of dawn. The sky was painted in shades of orange and violet, but what truly woke the neighborhood was not the morning light, but a roar. At first, a distant murmur, like the rumble of a metallic storm approaching from the horizon, then louder, closer, until it became a deafening thunder. Windows rattled, glass trembled, dogs barked uncontrollably. It was a sound impossible to mistake. Hundreds of engines roaring in unison. Alex opened the door of his house, his eyes still heavy with sleep. What he saw froze him in place. In front of him, lined up like an army of steel and leather, more than 700 bikers were waiting. They filled the entire street, an endless tide of helmets, black jackets, and headlights glowing like eyes in the shadows. The ground shook beneath his feet. The roar was so intense it could be felt in his chest, as if each heartbeat merged with the engines. It was a spectacle impossible to forget. Something out of a movie, but it was happening right there in front of his house. And then he saw him, the man with the bicycle, now mounted on a gleaming chrome Harley-Davidson, stood in the front row. He was no longer the weary drifter who had arrived, dragging broken scraps. Now he stood as a leader, eyes fixed on Alex, wearing a smile filled with respect, gratitude, and something more, a silent promise. At that moment, Alex understood the magnitude of what he had done. What had been for him a simple gesture of kindness meant far more to that man. And that brotherhood of steel was there to prove it. Because bikers never forget, never let a noble act go unanswered. The boy, who until then had been invisible to many, became the center of attention for 700 men feared everywhere. The air thickened with an energy beyond words. It wasn't intimidation, it was pure respect, eternal respect. That day was carved into the memory of the neighborhood. The neighbors, who at first watched in fear from behind half-open windows, soon realized the truth. Strength is not always measured in fists, chains, or weapons, but in small gestures born from the heart. Alex, a boy without wealth or fame, had achieved what few men in the world could, earning the respect, protection, and honor of a brotherhood feared everywhere. He hadn't done it with violence or with grand speeches, but with a simple, pure, selfless act. The bikers hadn't come to intimidate or spread fear. On the contrary, their presence was a living symbol of loyalty and gratitude, a reminder that even in the darkest depths, where life seems relentless, there is still a light that burns bright. The light of nobility, of brotherhood, of those who never forget the good they've received. And so, before 700 engines roaring in honor of a young man, the entire neighborhood understood that true greatness is not found in the strength of steel, but in the invisible strength of values. And if you too want to be part of this community that revives the stories others keep silent, subscribe right now, because what's coming is even more surprising, darker, and more real than you imagine. A single act of kindness changed the life of a young man forever, and reminded the world that even the hardest hearts beat with respect when they encounter true nobility. Don't forget to subscribe, because in this channel, every story is more incredible than the last.